Welcome to the summer 2025 season of the Planet LP podcast. This is episode 112. Hello there. I'm Ted Asregadoo, your host of Planet LP since 2021. I am always appreciative of you taking the time to either listen to or watch, if you're watching on YouTube, this podcast. As they say on those commercial airlines every time you fly, we know you have a lot of choices out there, and we're very grateful that you chose Planet LP. It is currently 72 degrees and mostly sunny outside, and flight attendants, please prepare for arrival. And where have we landed on this journey? With Billy Joel. Why Billy Joel? I mean, if you have listened to this podcast, you might remember that back in 2022, episode 37 to be exact, I had as a guest my friend Scott Birmingham. Scott at the time was the biggest Billy Joel fan I knew. Sadly, Scott is no longer alive, but that episode was really good because we chewed over the question of what's the matter with Billy Joel. Me not being a Billy Joel fan, and he at the time was the biggest Billy Joel fan I knew. So we were talking about what we liked and disliked. He talked about what he liked and I talked about what I disliked. And we went fairly deep into it. But then this HBO documentary just comes out just this year. It's around 5 hours and it's called And So It Goes. And I thought about after watching this, I thought, wow, maybe I should have a couple of other big Billy Joel fans on the podcast to talk about this documentary, to talk about some of Billy's albums, and to talk about the way in which the music of this artist has affected their lives. So who are these other fans? My guests are returning champ Jeff Giles. He is the founder of Popdose. He's also a podcast host of The Record Player with his friend Matt Wardlaw. Jeff is a novelist, a blogger at Hefito Blog, and now the founder of a new venture called Harmonic FM, a site that allows one to build one's own record store, become a curator, and recommend your favorite music, songs and albums by independent artists. Jason Hare is the other one of that dynamic duo. Jason is also a Popdose founder and is now addicted to triathlons and Ironmans. Competitions. And in addition to being a big Billy Joel fan, Jason, like me, is a huge fan of Pete Townsend. In fact, he was on this very podcast talking about Pete Townsend with me a number of episodes ago. So seek that one out at planetlp.com. So the table is set, dinner's almost ready, and what's on the entree? It's the music of Billy Joel. Hey, Jeff Giles. How are you, my friend?
Hi. How you doing?
And Jason Hare. How are you?
Hello.
Should I be calling you Peter?
Yes, I put my name in as
Peter Hewitt.
Peter Hewitt. I'm sure Jeff knows who that is. Do you know
I don't,
this?
actually.
I don't
Peter
either.
I want to say he's one of the members of Player.
Peter, that's Peter Beckett.
Thank you.
Peter Hewitt is the guy who in the 80s sang the high notes on An Innocent Man. Tours, I believe.
Like before Crystal?
Yeah, he jumped in, I think, on the Innocent Man tour, singing them right out the gate. And then, and then he went through the tour of Russia, and I don't think he was there on Stormfront because by then Crystal came in.
I didn't realize that Billy never had the Stones to hit those live ever. I assumed that didn't happen until late 80s.
Wow, well, that's some deep. This is a little deep Joel
We're
here.
Getting right in.
Yeah, right. I was about to ask Jason about how he's doing post Ironman triathlon, just constantly on the move, as it were. Because for folks who don't know, Jason is addicted to competitions like bicycling and running and swimming, also known as a triathlon. But I think that addiction leveled up to the Ironman competition, right?
That's right. I've learned that I do very well at operating it like a simmer for many, 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 many hours, as opposed to going really fast for very short distances. So I like to just spend all day doing these events.
I've been following you on Facebook since Facebook was a thing, and I've noticed your journey went from acting to trolling Jeff to becoming addicted to exercise in a way. I remember the first time you did 100-mile bike ride. You were kind of chronicling it on, I believe, on Facebook, and I was like, "Holy crap! You did 100 miles? That's
Yeah,
insane!"
it's still one of my goals for you and me to ride together
Yeah,
at some
I
point.
mean, well, I'm such an old man now that I would have
Oh,
one of those bicycles that are like
stop.
tricycles, like I'd be with a little
Okay.
flag going.
As long as it's got a little horn on it, little honk honk.
Exactly.
One of those
So
rides past my house every day
Yeah,
around dinner time. There's somebody on an older person, much
yeah,
like you, Ted, is on this
yeah,
bike.
maybe. Yeah.
And it does have a little flag on the back. I love it every time.
A little safety flag, or is it a little American flag,
I
or
think it
whatever?
might even be a pride flag. I'm not sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, it's good. I love it. I love it. So, and for those who don't know, Jeff Giles and I have been friends for a very long time. Before we even got into this kind of space where we're talking about pop culture, Jeff and I met in an American government class where I was the teacher and he was the student, and we found very quickly that we had a shared love of music. Though his tastes ran, as I always used to tell him, I was like, "How old are you? You're like my older brother. Your tastes are like 10 years older than mine." And
Well,
he's
I
all, "Well,
knew right away. I respected you so much. You even got me to listen to Rush.
well, see, I'm wearing a Rush shirt today. I don't know if you can
It's
see
not a
that.
surprise.
oh, nice.
Yeah, right there it is. It's from the Vapor Trails tour. So, but we're not talking about Rush. Well, a little bit, but we're talking about Billy Joel and Billy Joel's documentary that had come out on HBO. And it's called "And So It Goes," which I should probably put up the graphic here of Billy Joel's "And So It Goes," and there it is. And Jeff, I'll start with you since you've kind of reevaluated your Billy Joel obsession on your blog, which is called Hefito Blog. You posted some live tracks from the Nylon Curtain tour, and I'm going to read what you wrote in that post. And that post is for subscribers, I believe. You can't. You're kind of operating on a freemium model where some
You,
of
you,
the
you can
content.
read the text that you're about to share. The only
Yeah.
part that you can't get unless you're a paid subscriber is the files, the actual.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So here it is. I
How,
subsisted.
however,
Okay, go
Ted,
ahead.
you should know that if you do read this out loud, you do owe Jeff some money.
I.
It's not a lot. It's like 75 cents, but Jeff
Oh,
is keeping.
I
Jeff
got a
is
coin jar over here. I'll just
Yeah.
put it in an envelope and
Yeah.
mail
Put
it
some
off.
bread in my jar,
put
Ted.
some
Yeah.
bread in his jar. Jeff
What
is
am I
keeping
doing here?
track, and he will send you an invoice.
It says here, I subsisted on a steady diet of Billy Joel records in my formative listening years and have spent a lot of time thinking and writing about the man and his music. But at a certain point, those albums lost a lot of appeal to me. And I'm not reading this actually very well. Lost a lot of their appeal to me. I don't think it's a case of familiarity breeding contempt. Instead, I think Joel's songs often come from a perspective that, for a variety of reasons, becomes less interesting as you get older and life forces you to see nuance. It's a journey he went on himself, from, quote, angry young man to shades of gray, Natch, but that doesn't make it any easier to ride along with his more petulant protagonists. Petulant protagonists? Boy, that's some alliteration there.
Well, thank you.
So,
I tried.
do you think that he was like unnuanced in his prime, and like he was just sort of, I don't know, his lyrics were like writing with a sledgehammer in a way?
I think that a lot of his first person perspective tends to be pretty self-serving,
Oh,
particularly on those early records. I think, go back to the first album, "Everybody Loves You Now." That's he was really good at the kiss off. He was really good at pointing out other people's flaws, and but he was also generally kind of the hero in his own songs, and
yeah,
that isn't particularly unusual, but I do think that his earliest and most successful material, most commercially successful material, um, from a lyrical perspective, as much as he may have tied into the mood and the things that his generation was feeling. I think there are deeper things that you can listen to. And my friend here, my counterpart, my buddy, is going to say, and I agree that there are other things that you can enjoy if you're not coming so hard from a lyrical perspective. But yeah, after a while, going back to those records just didn't move the needle for me as much as I wanted it to.
Interesting. Okay. So Jason, you, as far as I know, and I searched the Popdose database, as it were, and I did not see really anything that you have written about Billy Joel, even though you are a huge fan of
This
his.
has been my struggle for like 20 years is to get Jason to write something about Billy Joel because he's got a lot to say about Billy Joel. But yeah.
You do have a lot
Yeah.
to say about him, and I've seen it in posts like on social or in our conversations on group chats or email or whatever. But so I know that you're a big fan of his, but there's just something missing. And for those who don't know, Jason, of course, is one of the co-founders of Popdose and has written a tremendous amount on pop culture, but there seems to be an omission, and that's Billy Joel.
Yeah, I think it's because most of my writing for Popdose was, as you mentioned before, about trolling Jeff or about cheesy music or the charts. I always wrote sort of with my tongue in my cheek, and there was some sincere stuff I wrote, but not a lot. And
Yeah.
I almost did write something when Billy released Turn the Lights Back On, just about my relationship to that.
I wish you
But,
had.
well,
Yeah,
what
me
happened
too.
is you wrote
Yeah.
something and I thought it was, I was
Damn
like,
it.
I thought it was so good. I was like, well, screw this. But, to oversimplify, our perspectives on music, Jeff is, I think, more of a lyrics guy and I am more of a music guy.
Yeah.
And, I've got my piano behind me and
Piano.
my piano. And then
Yeah.
slightly above that, if I turn my camera up, you can see my Billy Joel
Hey, look at
greatest
that.
hits
Oh,
autograph record there,
yeah.
because Billy is and always has been my inspiration for playing the piano. So I first heard The Stranger when I was about 6 years old.
Mhm.
It was after Innocent Man came out, and my cousin gave me a copy of The Stranger on cassette, and I heard Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, and I heard the piano play on there, and was just hooked. And that's what made me want to start taking piano lessons. So I have, I play still just about every day. If I pass by this instrument, I am stopping to play it. And often I am still playing Billy Joel songs, many that I have played for decades. So, where Jeff's perspective on the lyrics, I think, which I think is totally valid, has changed for him as he's grown older. My perspective on the music has not diminished, because I think the quality of his chord progressions, the craft of music, the songwriting, the music part of songwriting, I think, has always been incredibly strong, and still brings out nuances to me. There are still things I hear. I will look at a song like Angry Young Man or
Mhm.
Miami 2017, and I will look at um, the actual notation, and I'll realize, oh, I've not been playing that right for years, and I've played both of those songs in bands from high school till my late 30s. I missed that note, that one note that he threw into the chord, the nine, the C add nine. I missed the C add nine. I was just playing the C, or I was playing a C7 or whatever. And
Suddenly, this has become like Rick Beato's
yeah,
video. I mean,
sorry, didn't mean to get
music theory. I
but
don't know.
right. No,
Yeah.
no,
No, this is
that's fair.
interesting. Huh?
That's fair.
Yeah,
I mean, but I still pick out nuances in that music. And so I
Yeah,
approach
yeah.
it from the musical perspective. So because I look at it from that way, and my relation to it as a piano player, nothing has really changed for me.
Right.
In fact, that, like I said, there's still new stuff for me to discover.
That's good when an artist can still surprise you after all this time, that you've listened to these albums over and over and you play this music, that you can still discover things like, wait a minute, I think I've been playing that not entirely correctly. And a little deeper dive, and you realize he threw something in that I didn't catch, and it's
Is
been
there
decades. Yeah, yeah.
is there a song that's the most challenging for you to play from the catalog?
Oh, there's still a bunch that I can't play. I can't play um, the breakdown in stiletto.
Really?
His left
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
his
okay.
left hand is doing octaves, and I'm not a great left hand player. Billy Joe will say he's not a good left hand player too. And I've met him, I've shaken his hands. They are like sausages. Um,
Wow.
but
Yeah.
he's doing this kind of thing with his thumb and his pinky moving up, and that's just not a skill that I have taken the time to learn. Can't play that. Can't play Root Beer Rag. Um, Still can't, despite being one of my favorite songs that I've been playing for years, I still don't do a great job of playing like Summer Highland Falls. Um, just something about it, and the finger play in the right hand is just technically challenging for me. So that's good for me, right?
Yeah.
Like I learned scenes from I heard scenes from Italian Restaurant when I was 6. I don't think I learned how to play it on piano until my mid 20s. Mid to late 20s, when I was finally like, oh, this song has been like a white whale for me. And then I spent a number of years being like, okay, I don't have a band. So how am I going to learn to play this song all by myself and play all of the instruments, or make it sound passable if I were to play it as a solo song? And I feel good about what I came up with that. So there's always like, what I'm just saying is that there's always stuff to learn. There's always still stuff that I'm not competent in. So that always gives me a little bit of a challenge.
So we all watched the documentary that was on HBO, and so it goes. A very long documentary, I might add. I think each episode, and there's only 2, goes on over 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So, Jeff, what was your sort of hot take when you first finished it? You were just like, "Wow, did I learn anything?" Or I knew 90% of this. What did you come away with on this?
Say I probably knew most of the story. I
Mhm.
did learn things. My hot take was that I had very low expectations, since I knew he had blessed it.
Mm.
I
Right,
figured
right.
that whenever that happens, what you get is a very sanitized
Yeah.
picture of
Hagiography.
the artist. And Jason and I talked about the documentary before it came out, and I made it clear that, and I think Jason probably had low expectations too, because when the artist is involved, eh.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
it's admirably unvarnished. I think particularly in the early going, my first surprise was they got his first wife to talk, and she talks at length. She's really the through line in both installments of the documentary.
Yeah, I was really surprised at her not only sort of giving up the goods, right?
Yeah,
She was like, okay, I'm just going to tell you how it is because I really don't have any fucks left to give. I'm just sort of like, I mean, these are people in their mid 70s at this point, and they're thinking, I don't know how much time I got left. I might as well just spill it. And she does, but she was an interesting character that I didn't know about. So I had no idea about really much about Billy Joel's history because, and I will say it because I was never a big fan of his until I came away from this documentary understanding that, wow, this guy's got a lot of talent. I mean, he's just like, I never really appreciated it. And I'll tell you why later, but um, yeah, his first, well, was that his first wife or his
first wife.
first wife? Okay, who became
He
his
was,
manager?
I think he was a teenager when they met. She for those who don't know, she was the girlfriend of his best buddy and bandmate in
Yeah.
his first. Well, I guess
So
the
I can
Hassles
move
weren't
out of
his
the way
first
here, and
band.
you can
Technically,
kind
I
of see the
suppose.
Attila. For those
Right,
of you
but
who are
prior to
watching this
that,
on
it was the
YouTube, yeah,
Hassles.
yeah.
It
Was
was
it the Hassles? Was
Right.
this
Hassles were
same dude
first.
here and this
Hassles.
guy?
Hassles came first.
But
Yes,
this guy here, as I'm pointing
that's that
to,
guy, John
Yep.
Small. Yeah.
there he is. Okay. And if you're
And
watching it on YouTube, you can see the album cover of this album called Attila, which
if you
was
go on YouTube, just stop there. Look at the album cover. You don't need to listen to the music.
it's,
But
yeah, it's
yeah, Billy basically poached his best friend's wife, um, they didn't get together right away, which was a source of great distress for Billy. But yeah, he was very young when
Right.
they met, and so she was a part of his story for that first immense wave of success. She took over his management, and then The Stranger came out, and she fought with Columbia to release the single that she thought was the right one to put out. And she was right. And from there on, it was all they were rolling in clover until the early '80s when they split up. So she has a lot of inside information about his early years and his rise to fame.
What about you, Jason? What did you take away from this documentary when you finished it? Did you say, God, I learned a lot, or I knew, like Jeff, a good chunk of it?
Yeah, I think similar to Jeff, I did know most of it. I hadn't seen a lot of the footage because they were able to pull up a lot of really cool stuff, including some brief audio footage of some outtakes from.
Is it the Turnstiles one?
It was
outtakes and alternate takes from.
It was the Turnstiles one. It was the one where he's working with the Elton John's band, right?
Oh, right.
I think that was Turnstiles.
Yes.
So I hadn't, and we only heard a snippet of that, and that's probably all we'll ever hear. But there were a lot of things that I didn't know in terms of all of that access to that material. In terms of Billy Joel himself, not a lot of stuff that I didn't know. I thought in terms of what Billy talked about, in terms of his own life, it's the closest we're ever going to get to that side of him. He doesn't talk about that stuff much. But as Jeff talked about, with the presence of his first wife, all of his wives, all 17 of them, all of them were willing to talk about him. All of them were willing to talk about his flaws. All of them still seem to have deep respect for him.
And love. Yeah.
And love. And this documentary does not make the impact that it makes, primarily without Elizabeth Weber, but also without Christy Brinkley and the honesty that she brings to that, and the vulnerability she brings to that, and the home video footage she brings to that, but also his wife after that, Katie Lee, right? Her talking about the differences with them in terms of age and social interests and stuff like that. And
she's basically in it long enough to describe the night they decided to get divorced, right?
Yeah.
Can you refresh me on that?
They're like at the dinner table, just the two of them, I think, the way she describes it anyway. And she's talking about kind of being unhappy, unfulfilled. And she said that he looked at her from across the table and was like, "You want to get a divorce?"
Oh, right.
Just sort of matter of fact, well, I guess we've reached the end of this one. So
should we get Chinese, or do you want to get a divorce?
Yeah.
But Elizabeth Weber, who left the picture in 82?
Something like that. Yeah.
So after Nylon Curtain, I believe.
Yeah, because the title, little digression here, but "And So It Goes" was a song that he wrote after the divorce. He went off to, what was it? The Bahamas.
St. Bart's.
Yeah. And ended up dating Elle Macpherson for a minute, and went from that to, of course, marrying Christy Brinkley, which sounds like a terrible hardship. But he was very sad when things fell apart with Elle Macpherson, and that song was written about her.
That
was
McPherson. Right. So,
it's interesting in that part of the documentary that all these models were on the island doing a photo shoot, and they caught wind that Billy Joel was there, and they're like, "I love Billy Joel," and he's the schlub of a guy, and he's probably thinking, "There's no way in hell I would ever get a supermodel, no way."
Right.
And certainly it wasn't just Christy Brinkley there, but
and Whitney Houston,
before she became a pop star,
which in the documentary is like this big. It's like this big bomb drop, right? Like it's like everyone, like, people probably know that he met Christy Brinkley in whatever way,
Sure.
but some people,
Yeah.
most people are going to watch that and be like, and Elle McPherson and
Right.
freaking Whitney Houston. Now,
And
so
she
like,
said something along the lines of, I sing too.
Right.
And he's
Right.
like, yeah, whatever. Everybody sings.
Yeah.
And then he starts playing. She starts singing along, and he's all like, "Holy shit! Oh my
Yeah.
god, this woman's got some pipes."
the children are our future.
Yeah.
But
Teach them
like,
well and let them lead the way, Jason.
but that's an example of like that's an example of a detail that, like, I knew all that stuff already,
Mhm.
but
See, I
but
didn't know it.
yeah, no, and you wouldn't be expected to unless you're like a complete Billy Joel nerd like me and Jeff, So like that documentary was great, I think, for a lot of people and for the masses who learned a lot. For me, it was more about the perspective of others that, Elizabeth Weber, like I was saying, she left the picture in like 82. She hasn't talked since then. She had no need to. And she probably had no need to do it for this either. I think Billy probably asked her to do it. And I think I read an interview where she said it was her kids or her grandkids. It was her grandkids that like convinced her to do it. Right.
Wow.
She had no need. No need to, she's got nothing that she needs to gain at this point. And I think you get that perspective from the documentary. She's not trying to set a record straight. She's not trying to get her side out there. She was asked the questions. She answered the questions and in a great way. And so that's what I think makes this documentary so special.
I want to emphasize what you said, because I think for people like us who have been listening to his music for a long time, that is what you get. You get to see her and hear her talk and get her perspective on that story. You get to see her son, who Billy raised for a period of years.
Yeah.
You get to see his sister. You hear a lot about. You see
his
lots of footage
stepbrother.
his stepbrother. You see a lot of footage of his father. I think the story that was probably most impactful for me was the one about his grandparents and how they escaped Nazi Germany by the skin of their teeth. And then after the war ended, went back to Germany. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
Billy's father and his grandparents both had a really kind of dim view of America and just culturally. It's separate, completely separate from his music or anything really to do with him, but just that story of them returning after being, hunted down and chased out of their homeland. I thought that was fascinating.
Absolutely. I was impressed so much with the first episode, the first half of the documentary. It revealed a lot to me. Not only his career, the climb from, relative obscurity up the ladder to being a superstar, but also his failed suicide attempts. Stealing his best friend's girl, as we referenced it, ended up being his wife, and then his manager, who vaulted him into superstardom. She really had a sense of what made him a unique artist of the time, and was able to push a lot of A&R people around and say, no, this is the single. This is the one that's going to hit. And they're like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And of course she was right. But yeah, the suicide attempts, I thought, well, I suppose artists and, the three of us have done a lot of work, sort of mining what art, how creativity in a sense, manifests itself and the artists. And sometimes these people, they swing wildly between poles. I mean, they could be bipolar, they could suffer from depression. With Billy Joel, I'm thinking like, this guy tried to kill himself before he was even like famous or anything. So maybe he's kind of suffered from something that his mother had, which is what they reveal early on in the documentary, that his mother was not quite the most stable person, that she sort of swung wildly between poles, and she was bipolar. She was very funny, very charming at one moment, and then she was very cruel, very withdrawn in another. So I don't know if his suicide attempts had anything to do with just that composition of his psychology or whatever, or just his mental health. But it certainly seemed like, I tried to kill myself a couple times. I drank, like lemon pledge and all that. And I'm like, he's just so matter of fact about it, just sort of like, it's so casual. But it's, I don't know if they really went any deeper. Did you know what sort of drove him, because you guys are Billy Joel fans, what sort of drove him to those suicide attempts? Was it just, a crappy relationship? Was he feeling bad about stealing his best friend's girl? I don't know.
You remember how important those feelings and those relationships were when you were in your late teens, early 20s. I think part of it is that.
Yeah.
And I think something that the documentary makes very clear, especially over time and into the second installment, is there's a lot of darkness to him. He's not necessarily a happy guy. He can be quite charming, but his records are not necessarily a barrel of laughs. And success did not change the fact that he had a lot of self-destructive tendencies. And I'll pass the ball to Jason. I don't want to talk too much about this.
The majority of it has an air of melancholy to it, maybe with the exception of An Innocent Man. But even some of that is on there in the title track, in Leave a Tender Moment Alone, where he's like, this is so great, but I'm going to say something and screw it up because I can't close my stupid mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always thought it was interesting that Tell Her About It is about talking, and Leave a Tender Moment Alone is about shutting up. on the same album. Tell Her How You Feel. No, stop. I put that together recently. I was very proud of that. But so much of his music has that, which I think is, I mean, I don't know what the song is that most reflects that, but And So It Goes is a major example of that melancholy.
Driven home really when Christy talks about the end of their marriage,
Mm.
because that is Billy reascendant, right? His brother-in-law makes off with all his cash.
Yeah.
He has to start over, not really start over, but he has to, replenish the coffers. He has to go on the road. He has to work really hard. And making albums was never easy for him to begin with. And he puts out River of Dreams, and he's as popular as ever. I don't know how many times platinum that record went, but very well received, wins Grammys, and then while that's going on, he slides into alcoholism and becomes a pretty nasty drunk. So it's, I like, they don't, all of this stuff is talked about in the open. I don't know that it's really said overtly that all the success in the world can't kind of change your fundamental makeup, and that he needed to get through some things in order to be a more complete human being, and platinum sales were not going to do that.
I think he's probably still there, but just doesn't choose to talk about it anymore because he's not writing lyrics for music, or he's not releasing lyrics for music. And he's really clammed up. He had the opportunity in the last year or so to really, if he wanted to, at any point, if he wanted to come back, he could come back, right? Like, he's been wooed by producers. He released this song. People made a gigantic deal over it. He played the Grammys. When I watched him at the Grammys, I was like, this man is uncomfortable. This man does not, he'll go through it, whether it's out of a sense of duty to the record company or Freddie Wexler, who produced it. He's going to go through the motions of talking to these people, but this man is crawling in his skin and really just wants to not talk about this anymore.
Maybe he hates his own music. Maybe he's just tired of playing these songs over and over. He had to go on. I didn't realize how long he was on the road with Elton John. Those tours. 16 years was
the
it?
Road for a few years here and there, but for the most part, he's been on the road since 1972. I mean,
Yeah.
his catalog hasn't changed one whit since 93.
Well, what was interesting about the documentary is that they did talk about the email that he sent to his band being like, I'm done. I loved that. I was like, that's really interesting to me. Him being like, I'm done. And there was a period similar to like what Phil Collins went through, right? Where people were like, okay, enough. The critics are shitting on him. But then I think and I think it is an accurate story that around 2012, when he did the Hurricane Sandy concert, he knocked that out. He did a great job at that. He did what, I mean, this is probably exaggerating a little bit, but I think he was the best one of that night, similar to Queen at Live Aid or the Who at the concert for New York. That was kind of his real thing, where people were like, oh yeah, this is good. And he was ready for a sort of comeback. The residency at the Garden still could be continuing right now and doing great.
I've never seen the guy live, but I feel like I've been a prisoner of his music for far too long. I know it's sort of a joke between the three of us that, I'm not a Billy Joel fan. And I think it's no secret to those who've been listening to this podcast that I had a career in radio, and that's really what ruined Billy Joel's music for me.
You had a career in a very particular
yes,
format.
That's right.
I was a prisoner of adult contemporary radio for about 13 years, and it was for one station, and I might as well just say it. It's KKIQ, 101.7 KKIQ. I worked there for, well, as I said, 13 years, but not full-time. Sometimes it's part-time. But one thing that never went away was Billy Joel's music. Yeah, but it wasn't like they would refresh the playlist at all. It was the same goddamn songs over and over. And if you had to listen to this every day, that you come into work, it's like, oh God, you hear the DJ, or when I was when I had to preview what was coming up this hour, Billy Joel would routinely be on the playlist. And I would think, does anyone get sick of these goddamn songs? I am. And I tried crying uncle with the program director, but I said, hey, Billy Joel has a pretty big catalog. He has way more than just these songs. Do you think we could refresh the playlist a little bit?
You're aware that we're a adult contemporary radio station, right? You're aware of how radio works, right, Ted?
I said, I know how radio works, but I'm just like, could you just throw the people who work here in the salt mines a little bone? Just refresh a few songs. Just take a few out of rotation. But no, what he did is he doubled down on it. He goes, you know what? I'm going to increase the spins on those Billy Joel songs just to get at you. Yeah. So
like Jason said, this is how AC works. And so I have to imagine that the format made you hate. I mean, how do you like Genesis? How do you listen to Phil Collins now after working in AC?
Well, I guess I listen to the album cuts, and I just skip over the hits. I don't really listen to the hits very much, but
there's got to be a list of artists that you hate just as much or more because
Eagles,
of overexposure through
Eagles.
Okay.
Yeah, Eagles did it. I used to like Eagles, some the hits. And some of the deeper cuts, nothing like where I'm a completist or anything, but I had some of their more popular albums like Hotel California and Long Run and all that. And when I listen to them now, I generally tend to grimace when I hear the songs that were overplayed. But I talked about the deeper cuts, that I do like a lot of Billy Joel's music, the deeper cuts, but let me just sort of sketch for the listener and the viewer what I had to endure for 13 years. Here are the songs that never went away. Piano Man, okay?
Piano.
Just the Way You Are, Moving Out, My Life, It's Still Rock and Roll to Me. God, I hate that song.
I could play all of these, right? I could just go over there and play them all.
Yeah,
at the top of the hour, I wish you were at your piano.
There's the soundtrack plays like, Piano Man, you don't like that one?
But wait, kids, there's more. We've got Uptown Girl. We've got The Longest Time, River of Dreams, We Didn't Start the Fire. These are 9 songs I really never want to hear again, but I still hear them if I'm flipping around the dial. And that's what ruined Billy Joel for me. They just fried those songs to a crisp. I have a visceral reaction to them when I hear them. And I just say, no more Billy fucking Joel. I can't take it. And then I watch this documentary and I'm like, maybe I should reassess my view of this man
I think there's
because
a potential for a whole series here. I imagine Ted must hate Fleetwood Mac,
yes, well, there
make him go through something that makes him appreciate the artist after all, right? We'll just do it for all of them.
This is really the ethos of like anything that I've written or that we've talked about that we have the most fun on. It's like, hey, you don't like this thing? Let's cover you in it. Let's drown you in the Fender Rhodes of just the way you are
until you come out the other side and you're like, oh, this is what I missed.
Oh my God. It is torturous. It really is. Okay. After a mention from our sponsor, Steve Fox's Old School, we're going to talk about the album that made me hate Billy Joel a lot less. Hey there, folks. I'm going to be honest with you for a moment. Sometimes, even for a music aficionado like myself, I want somebody else to drive, to take the wheel, to just play something that's interesting. I get tired of curating playlists. That's a confession. But I think I have found the station that does just that. That is, I can let them take the wheel. It's Steve Fox's Old School at stevefoxoldschool.com. Well, what are you going to get if you go to Steve Fox's Old School? You're going to get classic soul from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. You're going to get some tasteful R&B. You're going to get some of those classic hip-hop tracks and some surprising disco numbers that make you want to say, this sounds great. So let Steve Fox's Old School take the wheel. Whether it's a party or you're at work or you're just working in the backyard and just want some me time and a good soundtrack to take you through the day. It's Steve Fox's Old School at stevefoxoldschool.com. They are a proud sponsor of the Planet LP podcast, and you can get them on TuneIn Radio or at their website, stevefoxoldschool.com.
Steve Fox's Old School.
We're back, folks. Thank you and good night. No. So the album that made me hate Billy Joel a lot less was this one, the Nylon Curtain. I'll hold up the CD here. And I've got the background. For those of you who are watching it on YouTube, you can see the background. But those who are listening on the audio, I'm holding the CD in my hand. And here's the back end. It shows a very sober-looking Billy Joel holding a cup of coffee and reading the paper.
Probably was not sober.
He was not sober. But that's probably not coffee in that coffee mug then. But this to me, his 1982 album, The Nylon Curtain, is his masterpiece. I think that he put a lot of thought into this record. I don't know if it was just a moment where he was reflecting on really his life, that led up to this moment. 1982 is not one of those years where you sit back and you go, thinking about when I was a boy and what led up to where I am now, because he's probably like in his 30s at this point. I bought this record probably because I saw Pressure on MTV and I thought, it's a pretty good song. It's a little different for Billy Joel. It's kind of I don't know. I like the video. I thought he looked he's entertaining. He's funny at times. Maybe not so much in that video, although when he's on the game show, it's kind of funny where he wins and because he's under pressure and he's like shaking the hands of the host and he's getting his fabulous prize and all of that. But he put a lot of thought into this record about is sort of a biographical, generational look at who he is and who his generation is, and it's filtered through the Beatles. One of his, I would say, inspirations. One of the artists. One of the bands really that made him want to do music. And so when you listen, or when I listen to, and I'm sure you do too, the Nylon Curtain, you hear a lot of Beatles sounding music, and they did that within the studio. But I often look at Billy Joel as a guy who tries on different styles, and the Beatles is one of the styles he tries on. But to me, just the look back and the kind of songs that he's writing on this, it's a bit of a concept album. And to me, it's probably the most original that Billy Joel sounds to me in terms of his songwriting. the way in which it really is a concept album about being a baby boomer,
Mhm.
and what this generation had gone through and is still going through at the time. And it leads off with Allentown, which, at the time in 1982, the country was going through a horrible recession. I mean, we think about the Great Recession as a bad one. The 1982 recession was pretty bad in itself. And I remember my mom and my stepdad had bought a house at that time, and they had to get one of those 80/20 loans, and the 20% that the other loan, I think the annual percentage rate was at 17%.
Yep.
And I know that everyone's like screaming about inflation and how much, home loans and auto loans cost nowadays, but 17%.
Yeah.
And
That
in
was
places,
widespread. Yeah.
yeah, in places like in Pennsylvania, where, deindustrialization was happening, and you had places like Allentown, Pennsylvania, and these sort of steel towns where the whole working class, middle class people that were moving up the ladder by not going to college, but just getting a job and working really hard, that was all slipping away. And he kind of captures that in a way that Bruce Springsteen tried to capture it. But I thought that Billy Joel did a really, I don't know, some ways it was better than what Springsteen was doing for me. Anyway, that's a little bit my long dissertation on the Nylon Curtain. But thoughts on this record, Jason?
Oh, I would sooner turn it over to Jeff, because I think Jeff has stronger feelings. No, I think Jeff has stronger feelings about this album than
Really?
I do. I like this album. It's not my favorite of his albums. I think, in the documentary they talk about how this is the album where he went in and used the studio more as its own instrument. The You're absolutely correct on the Beatles influences, which are all over his career, but certainly stronger in this album. And I can't remember if he said it was consciously or subconsciously like influenced by the death of John Lennon, but songs like Surprises,
Mm-hmm.
Laura. I mean, Laura sounds enough like a Beatles song that when my wife heard it, and she is not the deepest of Billy Joel cuts, she heard it and she was like, "Wow, that's like Beatles much? Like that's a lot of Beatles in that song."
It is, yeah.
Uh, but certainly a very strong album. There's only a couple of tracks on that album that I don't really listen to often. Surprises and Scandinavian Skies are probably the
Mm-hmm.
ones. But there's a lot I love about that album. I love that. I think the hits are strong. I think Allentown is strong. I think Pressure is strong. Good Night Saigon, for a man who did not go to war, but as he tells it, was tasked with recounting what that was like, I think paints a very vivid picture um, of what that was like. And the final track, Where's the Orchestra, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of really captures Billy Joel's melancholy, right? I was
Yep.
expecting everything to be great, and oh, it's not. It's not a musical. It's a
Yeah.
drama.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
So that bittersweet feeling is really that's all over his career, but really well stated in there. But I'll stop because I think I'd like to hear what Jeff has to say about Nylon Curtain.
I don't know if it's my favorite Billy record. I don't. It isn't the most inviting Billy record, but it is, I think, his masterpiece. I think part of my sort of beef with his general perspective in the early records is he was very much a boomer. He's like the boomer's boomer. His story is post-war, and they were a generation that had the economic luxury of being navel gazing, and you hear that in his early work. It's very me focused, and the Nylon Curtain, I think, is the first time when you, as they say in the documentary, it's the first time. There's some critic. Was it Haydn? Jason, do you remember? It says this is the first time you hear him reaching for something beyond himself.
That seems right.
Yeah, and he's not just talking. There are times when like She's Right on Time. That's a This Is What's Happening to Me song, but it's also, I think, a commentary on dating in the early '80s. Allentown is actually a really solid snapshot of economic recession. And like you said, Ted, it was bad, and it was all over pop culture. I think that this record came out the same year that Stripes did, which is a movie about two guys whose job prospects are so bleak that they join the fucking army.
Yeah.
It had seeped into all corners of pop culture. But I think that Billy, because of who he was and when he was born and where he was born, he was uniquely qualified to offer this commentary. And I think he does it brilliantly. And I also think that it's really appropriate that the Beatles are so prominent in the sound of this record, because what's the musical act that inspired 99% of boomers to pick up a guitar? Like that, it's got to be the Beatles. And so, it is not the most. It's not like the Billy Joel Tricycle, right? It's not. I don't think it's the first record you want to hear. It isn't gonna, unless you're a very specific kind of person. I don't think it's going to inspire you to check out the rest of the catalog. But I do think it represents him at his absolute best, and I think it's kind of downhill from there. I mean, Innocent Man is great in its own right, but it's very much a pastiche, and it's very much him consciously evoking the songs that he grew up with. And then after that, I think you reach the point of diminishing returns. It became progressively more difficult for him to make new music. I think the Nylon Curtain is probably the pinnacle.
I mean, it's a dark record. Think about it. You've got not only deindustrialization, you've got alienated Vietnam vets, you've got difficult relationships, kind of a allusion to drug use, and just a sense of utter loneliness. And he did say in a box set release that also had him talking about some of his records. He said that, sadness sometimes makes for good material. And it's like, okay, you're right. And I just kind of want to focus a little bit on how the album starts with Allentown and ends with Where's the Orchestra. And I was listening to a BBC interview with Billy Joel about this record, and it was on the release, and he had flown to London, and it's kind of, you can find it on YouTube. It is a bit humorous in that the interviewer talks very close to the mic, and he is almost whispering as he interviews Mr. Billy Joel, and he asks him, track for track, Mr. Joel, what exactly were you doing with Where's the Orchestra? It seems a bit melancholy. And then, of course, he's full throat. He goes, "Yeah, it was melancholy. I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm all like, hey, where the hell's the orchestra? It's just sort of like, he sounds almost like he's channeling the Three Stooges." And, the interviewer, for, I guess, credit to him, he never really laughs too much except for his usual British laugh. It's very humorous, Mr. Joel, but what I liked about the way in which they recorded that song, This Is Where the Orchestra is that they split the stereo track. And so his vocals are on one side of the stereo field, and then all the music is on the other side, which kind of, to me, was sort of a brilliant studio trick, because it was a way to sort of layer in a thematic message of loneliness, that he thought, again, it was supposed to be this musical, that life was a musical, but it's actually a stage play, a drama, and sometimes you don't understand what the words are, and that what the bigger themes are, because maybe it's just kind of going over your head. But right at the end, they merge the music on the one side becomes full stereo. It's on both channels, and they allude to, at least there's sort of a reprise of Allentown, although very melancholy and slow. So to me, that, because I'm a Rush guy, right? I always look at the big concept and the message, and I'm thinking, oh, it is the concept. I mean, he's bookending these two things here. I mean, here's the individual in Allentown leaves because there's nothing there, or he's getting very hard to stay, but we're living here in Allentown. And at the end, life wasn't a musical, and he's looking for the orchestra, and it's all kind of isolated. And this guy's sort of thrown into this world where it seemed like there was this community and everything was sort of brought up, and you're brought up to believe that you're going to have a good life, just, maybe supersede your parents in terms of their income. And then in the end, it's like this loneliness. And it's one of, I don't know, I really, really like the way he structured, or how the album was structured. I don't know if he had that much input in the track
I'm
list.
sure he did, but I got to believe that a lot of what you're describing was Phil Ramone. Phil Ramone
Really?
produced. We would be so remiss if we did not mention Phil Ramone.
Yeah.
Talk
So
about
he
Billy
was,
Joel. They go hand in
he was
glove.
like a longtime producer of his, like
Yes.
Yep.
through the biggest albums, I guess.
Yes,
From
all the best
Stranger.
From The Stranger on, is that?
Well, from Stranger to the Bridge.
Stranger
Okay.
to the Bridge. Yeah, almost 10 years. Yeah.
So, Jeff, is it what you were thinking? Because I was thinking this maybe while Ted was talking a little bit about the circle back to Allentown at the end of Where's the Orchestra. Are you thinking that might have been a Phil Ramone decision or idea?
It may have been, but I think that what I'd really be willing to bet on is that it was Phil's idea to pan the track that way.
Right.
That seems like a very producer thing to do, and as they make clear in the documentary, Phil was more heavily involved in creative decisions than I think a lot of people would suspect. That he made compositional suggestions. I think at one point it's Liberty probably who says that Phil would say, you've got a piece of this song and a piece of this song. Why don't we put them together?
It was the fifth Beatle.
Billy really relied on Phil for that. Phil was the one who made Just the Way You Are come together, right? Who changed it from what the traditional drum beat to what they refer to as the backwards samba or something. He's the one who kept the whistle at the beginning of The Stranger and at the end of The Stranger, because Billy started whistling and he's like, that's what you need. But yeah, Phil is a huge influence, and it's so funny because, then in 89 or 90, I can't remember which year. Well, I think it was 89. He ditches Phil, and apparently that hurt Phil.
Well, can you imagine?
I think Liberty talks about that, right? That like Phil was hurt by the fact that he went to Mick Jones.
Of all fucking people.
Of all fucking people. And I think that also speaks to Billy. And okay, maybe I'm reaching a little bit here, but I think when things get a little too comfortable for Billy, I think he's uncomfortable with that comfort, right? Which could be why he changed producers again to go with Korchmar for River of Dreams, and changed out his band.
Yep.
All these things that made him so successful in that Imperial phase, he got rid of. And so I don't know, there's a part of me that wonders, like, is that an element of self-sabotage? Because he can't be happy with the success.
Yeah, and also those records are inferior. When he ditched his band and he ditched Phil, everything that came after was not as good. And I have no love for The Bridge, which was the last record that he made with Phil and his band, but everybody's got ups and downs.
Yeah, that album being stale was less about the production and more about just where Billy was having a new kid and a new wife and not wanting to be there.
Exactly. Earlier, you alluded to Billy playing with Elton John's band, and the story there is that the label wanted him to work with George Martin. They wanted him to work with Jim Guercio.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it because I knew I was going to screw it up.
These were big names. These were big names, and Billy was a nobody. He had a minor hit, a regional hit with Captain Jack, and kind of a hit with Piano Man. He had every reason to say, "Okay, I will do what you want," especially since they were trying to hook him up with, top shelf
legends.
Producers.
Yeah.
Yes, but he said no.
Not without my band.
I want to make a record with my band, and the record didn't work out because he produced it himself. He didn't know what he was doing. But that is the beginning of the Billy Joel story that we knew on the radio. Like he gets in the studio with his band. He hooks up with Phil Ramone, who understands how to get the right sound out of these guys. And they are a band of brothers throughout the 80s. And so I think he really shot himself in the dick when he severed
Yeah.
ties with those guys. And my
Yeah.
one beef with the documentary is that it really glosses over what happened there. Liberty is the only one. His drummer, Liberty DeVito, is the only one that they really talk to about that period.
Yeah, and he's trading in his Chevy for a Cadillac.
I wanted to go just sort of lightning round on some of these albums. And I'm going to guess, if you're watching it again on YouTube, you can see in the background, I have the album cover art of The Stranger. I'm going to guess that this is the album that both of you found Billy Joel, or that you glommed onto his music. Was it this one or was it other ones?
So for me, the first time I think I heard Billy Joel was on the radio in '83. Uptown Girl, Tell Her About It. And so that's how I knew who Billy Joel was. And I don't know if I listened to that album. I probably did. I'm sure my mom bought it, but The Stranger was the one where I was like, oh, that is speaking to me in some way
Yeah.
past
Yeah.
just pop music, like
How
radio
about you?
friendly pop music. Good.
How about you, Jeff?
I think it was Glass Houses.
Really?
I remember being too young to stay up to watch the Grammys when he was going to be performing. And that would have been, I think he was playing It's Still Rock and Roll to Me, your favorite. So that probably would have been the 81 Grammys.
Yeah.
But my parents had Glass Houses on vinyl. They had 52nd Street. They had The Stranger, Piano Man. And then on tape for the family van, they had Songs in the Attic, Nylon Curtain, and then later Innocent Man. And so the years between Innocent Man and The Bridge that was when his early catalog to me was an undiscovered country. Like I'd go to the library and I'd be so excited to get my hands on Street Life Serenade. When Cold Spring Harbor, his infamously poorly mastered debut, was reissued, I think in '85, I was thrilled to run to the mall and get a copy on tape. So yeah, I spent those years really familiarizing myself with everything that came before. But I think it started
in his catalog. How would you rate The Stranger? Is that right up there with?
Oh yeah,
like one of his best. Both.
When I was a kid, the deeper, more soulful stuff did not resonate with me. Everybody Has a Dream. I would have skipped that in a heartbeat when I was 10 years old. But now I don't know if I would skip anything from that record. It's even Just the Way You Are. I think I could hang with that. It's been a minute since I listened to it, so I think how can you quibble with that record?
Yeah, Jason, what do you think of The Stranger? Is it right up there with your your top Billy Joel albums?
Yeah, I'm with Jeff on that one. I mean, Scenes from an Italian Restaurant may be my favorite song of all time, if I can be so bold. From a musical perspective, I love songs that tell a story.
Me too.
I love the way that they seamlessly, a la George Martin, put that song together. Like side 2 of Abbey Road, the way that goes together is just beautiful to me. And it took me a while to realize that one of the magic things about that song is just the way that Doug Stegmeyer, the bassist, and Liberty DeVito are in lockstep, especially during the Ballad of Brenda and Eddie part. I think you probably find it on YouTube, like an instrumental version of that song, right? The multi-tracks without the vocal. And if you can hear the way that the two of them are just locked in, he should have never gotten rid of that band.
No, never should have.
All right. How about this album, 52nd Street?
Nothing wrong with that one either. I would have skipped Until the Night as a kid, but that's a great song.
Yeah,
I guess there's some somewhat semi-gimmicky stuff like Zanzibar and Rosalinda's Eyes and Half a Mile, but those are some of my favorite songs. That's a great record.
Yeah, this
same with you, Jason. You really like this one?
No, I didn't as a kid, and I didn't in high school. I probably got into this album more in college when I remember sitting down in as a freshman in college in the little room in the bottom of the dorm where they had a piano and trying to learn Zanzibar on piano. This album did not resonate with me for a while, other than like the hits, right? Other than My Life and
Cannot argue with My Life.
no, I love that song. It's
Ted can.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, what about his biggest album, An Innocent Man? I mean, that one was, as far as sales are concerned, I think this is the one that probably vaulted him into the multimillionaires club. So.
Oh, man, he got ripped for this album, and I think they talk about that in the documentary. But when you talk about the melancholy of Billy Joel, and yes, I did say you've got a little bit on this album. I find it hard to argue with an album where he is just so happy and so thrilled to go back to that period. So I didn't know it at the time when I was 6 years old or 7 years old, or even when I was a teenager. I didn't know where he was channeling Wilson Pickett, or
Right.
or the Four
But Easy
Seasons
Money.
even.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Oh my God, Easy Money. Fucking love that track. I mean, he's just singing his heart out. So yeah, no, I do have a lot of, what do I skip on this album? Careless Talk is a throwaway song in my mind. Christy Lee, there's an outtake that's better, that I've heard that I like a lot better, but An Innocent Man, love that song.
All right. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this?
I would skip Tell Her About It. I would skip The Longest Time.
Oh man.
Yeah. I would probably skip Keeping the Faith.
No. No.
That of those three, that would be my favorite. But the biggest hits from this album, I didn't really care for. I love Leave a Tender Moment Alone. I can't. It's largely because Toots is on there. Toots Steelman, the harmonica player. Okay. I think This Night is wonderful. The title track is great. I have nostalgic feelings for this record because it was such a big hit when I was 9-10 years old. But it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite.
Yeah. You know what else is not your favorite? The bridge, which is which comes after Innocent Man. And this is Billy Joel kind of struggling at this point, I think, with his, I mean, maybe this is sort of the beginning of the end where he's like, do I really have anything left to say? Or I'm being forced to write some music because I really am not that inspired. And I re-listened to this record and yeah, it's not good Joel, as it were. Right. Yeah.
But think about it. He put out a record 72, 73, 74, 76, 77, 78, 80, 82, 83. That's for a guy who is not.
He's touring all through that period.
Yeah. For a guy who is not a prolific songwriter, that's a lot of work. And so, yeah, he gets married to a supermodel. They have a baby. He just wants to be home. He didn't want to make a record. But it was hot. It had been 3 years. You know, he had put out the requisite double disc greatest hits set. And it was time to get back on the road. He had to do it. He didn't want to. And you can hear it in every last goddamn second.
I think the quote that I think I've heard from Billy on this album, and I don't know where I picked it up, was he says, you can hear the seams on that record, right? Uh-huh. You can hear it kind of tearing them apart. And I think the greatest evidence of this is the fact that Billy is very much kind of in a place of its own because he is a lone songwriter, right? His only, up until this album, his only co-write credit is with Beethoven on This Night for including the Pathétique Sonata, right? So, but this album is so strained that, sorry for my dog's ass on camera there, apologize.
Love dogs.
But notice how quiet he is. But this album is so strained that he does one of his only songwriting collaborations with Cyndi Lauper. Now, nothing against Cyndi Lauper, but I don't think anybody would be like, she's on the list of my top 5 songwriters.
Yeah.
But because of circumstance, because they happened to be in the studio at the same time, because he happened to talk to her about how stuck he was, and she was like, well, let's try. And I'm not going to do a Cyndi Lauper impression, but she's like, let's just try and write something together. She pushed him. Cyndi Lauper pushed him to write something because he was struggling so much. That's really I think that's really indicative of the strain of this album.
Maybe the behind the scenes of the record is more interesting than the record itself. But because some of these stories were like, I didn't know any of that. Right.
Yeah, he had to force himself to go down to, he had to get an apartment in the city so that he could sequester himself to think like a songwriter again. And he would go down to Little Italy, and then he was like, all right, like you can tell he's really pushed. And he's like, what if I thought I was a big shot in Little Italy? What if I thought I was this guy, and puts on this persona, and that's where you get Big Man on Mulberry Street from, which is a fun song.
It is a good song. It is done no favors by the fact that it was recorded in 1986. The production, the instrumentation on this record is weak as hell. But it's a fun song.
And you hear that instrumentation on Modern Woman, right? Like that's,
yes.
Yes,
you do.
And it has a kind of, on the high end, it's too much of a sheen on it.
Oh yeah.
To the point where it just doesn't, it just feels a little sterile.
And just some weird decisions. Like I think an underuse of Steve Winwood on Getting Closer, right? He's got him on Hammond, but then he spends the entire track singing like Steve Winwood.
Yeah.
It's like, you fucking have him right there.
Use him.
And it's 85. Like Steve Winwood was about to
pop. Yeah.
Pop again, right? He was about to have his own solo moment. Like you could, and I will say, as I said with Christy Lee, there's an outtake of Getting Closer, which far surpasses the studio version.
That's the one on My Lives, right?
I don't know. I had it on bootleg for so many years, and I'm not even sure I listened to the My Lives version.
It goes on for longer, right? They don't fade out. Just when stuff's starting to get interesting.
I'd have to go back and listen. The energy is just different. Less attempt at a polish. It was like a rehearsal take.
But you're right. He tries to sing like Steve Winwood on Baby Grand. He's doing Ray Charles with Ray Charles across the mic.
At least he let him sing.
At least on Running on Ice, he's trying to be Sting. You can hear he's really trying to push material out by imagining these scenarios or trying to copy somebody else in his own way.
What about this record, Stormfront? This was
Garth Brooks' favorite.
That was oh man, somebody should have punched him in the nose. How dare you?
Someone should have grabbed him by the lapel and gone, what about When in Rome? What about When in Rome?
How can that be anybody's favorite Billy Joel record? Good Lord.
Well, it certainly had a big hit on it, or a couple big hits on it. Right? The Fire. That's one of my top 9, right? Or
which is a song
from Hell, Billy Joel songs from Hell.
Even Billy doesn't like that song.
Yeah, which is weird because wasn't that the whole thing is maybe it's PR or something where he said, "Wow, I wanted to be a history professor, and this was a way to kind of capture the way in which history unfolded." And newspaper headlines. That's it. It
was a fuck you to Sean Lennon is what it was. Cause Sean Lennon was the one that was in the studio, went to visit him in the studio or somewhere and said, we have it so much tougher now. When you guys were coming up in the 50s and 60s, nothing really happened. And he was like,
he's like, what? He was nothing really happened.
Fucking Cold War. Like for the record, I get why everybody hates that song. It doesn't particularly bother me.
It's chopsticks plus headlines.
Yep. Yeah. And he'll be the first one to tell you. There's some good songs that I don't mind. I Go to Extremes. I think that's a solid song with a good piano performance, even better in concert.
It's one of the only songs on that record where you actually hear some piano. Yeah, it's for what it is. I think it's pretty good. It's one of the stronger songs on the record.
And I don't have enough. Apple will only let me upload a certain number of album covers. But River Dreams, the final record that he put out, and then just sort of said, I'm not doing it anymore. I only heard the hit, River of Dreams. I never liked the song. Oh God, it's in my, my hits from hell. But you guys, what do you think of this? I mean, this is kind of the end of it. This is the last major statement he's made as far as an artist on an album. And like you said early on, Jeff, you said, yeah, it did really well, won a bunch of Grammys, and vaulted up the charts. People bought it, so it wasn't a stiff. It wasn't, it did well for him. But what's your take on this album?
I think it's better than Stormfront.
Yeah.
Probably better than The Bridge.
Okay.
I think Korchmar's production is better than Mick Jones's production. It's a warmer sounding album. I think there's definitely some filler on there. I mean, I don't ever need to hear Blonde Over Blue again, or I really like 2000 Years. I think Famous Last Words is a pretty good song.
Do you like Great Wall of China?
Not really.
I like that
Variation
song.
is fairly soulful. I think it was the best he could do, and I think it isn't the highest of notes you could go out on, but it's a respectable one.
Maybe it's schlocky, but I will put Lullaby up there with some of his best songs.
Right.
Certainly one of my favorites to play. I loved playing it when I was younger, around the years where that album came out. Certainly love playing it more now with my daughter telling me it's her favorite song and sitting next to me at the piano while I play it. Geez, I can't ask for anything more in my life. But and from that song is a classical. It's got classical influence all over it, and yeah, I love that song. I actually think this album is, like you said, Ted, I think it's fine. I'll listen to it all the way through, and I won't skip anything. But I'll enjoy. I like Great Wall of China. I'm fine with Blonde Over Blue. Again, not his best stuff. Certainly better than Stormfront. Although I do want to go back if we can briefly, just because one album we didn't talk about because it's not a new original material, Songs in the Attic. And I think
Love that record.
That is a fantastic live album.
Yes.
When I got my first CD player, it was, I think, the first CD I ever got, along with Richard Marx's Repeat Offender and the Pretty Woman soundtrack. It was my birthday. My mom got it all for me. But that's where I first heard Summer Highland Falls.
Yes.
But
talk about the concept behind the record, because it not only is it a fantastic live album, but what he did, he had this massive wave of success, but a lot of people probably didn't know that he had 3 or 4 records that came out before that.
That's
so
right.
What does he do?
Yeah, so he deliberately puts out these songs in the attic. He puts out these songs that have been relegated to the deep cuts, right? He puts Street Life Serenader on there. Mm-hmm. Miami 2017 had been a hit. And while that song is fine on the record, man, does it cook with...
That's the other thing. These are superior versions across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it
you know what he did there? He did a Kiss Alive, essentially. Because Kiss's first 3 albums. Though. You're right. There's no overdubs, but what I'm saying is that Kiss Alive was taking those first 3 albums, taking the best cuts off of those, and then it's not really a live record. I think the drums are the only thing that are live. But it refreshed that playlist. I mean, that was my gateway into Kiss, was that record. And then I went back and bought those studio albums, like the first one, Hotter Than Hell and Dressed to Kill. I'm all like, is this the same band? It's like, my God, this is horrible. And but it sounds like what you're saying with what Billy Joel did is he says, I want to give these songs a new life because they're very good songs, and maybe they weren't recorded the best. Maybe they languished because in terms of album sales, but now that I'm doing really well in terms of my career, I want people to hear it in a way that
it is
will excite their eardrum.
Yes.
One of the only live records that's worth a good goddamn.
Yep.
And I think
he's like, and wait till you hear him with my band.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Sorry.
They have really screwed up by not expanding that record, because there's plenty of other material from that era.
And he did, it was arena shows. It was stuff at like, Coliseums,
Yes.
but it was also intimate stuff, right? It's stuff like You're
Yeah.
My Home and
Mhm.
Los Angelinos and Everybody Loves You Now were recorded in small little clubs. And all that stuff was recorded.
And it was supposed to be, I'm remembering this now, it was supposed to be a double album, but
Was
Columbia
it?
said, no, we don't want to do that. That's what I've
Oh.
read anyway. Yeah.
I mean,
there's definitely
we
the
have,
material.
I've got bootlegs of, Songs in the Attic 2, which is like, all the other stuff that didn't make that record. Some of it being stuff like It's Still Rock and Roll to Me, but also stuff like Sleeping with the Television On from Glass Houses, like stuff like that. Again, if you're seeing Billy Joel between the late 70s and 82, you're getting like peak Billy Joel. After that, 84, the Innocent Man tour, the band starts to just get a little bit bigger. There's now a lot of backing vocalists. There's another keyboard player I guess there was Richie Canada was doing both sax and keyboards and stuff, but the core Billy Joel band. And it's really telling that when Billy Joel would talk about both his albums and I think his concerts, it was never an I, it was a we.
Yep.
I think he was most comfortable being part of a band. And if you really
Right.
wanted to get him out there again, you would do the fabled band that he's always talked about going out with like Sting and Don Henley and stuff. I mean, that would be a very old tour, but
Imagine the ticket prices.
oh my
Jesus
God.
Christ.
All right. Well, this has been actually a very enlightening conversation for me because it's made me appreciate Billy Joel in a way that I hadn't, because I
Your work
like
is done.
talking. Yes, your work is done. You have made me want to go and listen to the deeper cuts more intensely. But this documentary did a lot for me as well. It made me appreciate him as a songwriter, as a vocalist, understanding some of the trials and tribulations that he went through as an adult through his career, and just the level of this guy he's pretty miserable at times, the substance abuse that he didn't really talk about, his alcoholism, but it's pretty clear that he's probably an alcoholic. He just, hey, I never got a DUI. And I'm like, yeah, okay. You just never got caught, man. That's what happened. So, but yes, see the HBO documentary if you have not. And so it goes. It is well worth your time. I came away with it, as I said, with a deeper appreciation of Billy Joel as a musician and as a man. And this conversation has actually made me be less emotionally reactive to the hits that ruined it for me, and more open to just listening to his records and appreciate what they are in terms of songwriting and songcraft. So Jeff, Giles, Jason Hare, thank you for being on the Planet LP podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Anytime.
And thank you, dear listener, for listening. I'll be back soon right here with another episode of Planet LP podcast. So long.